Okay, so for these problems, I highly recommend that you draw a picture. So it says you're installing a grease waste trap. Okay. It says you're installing a grease waste trap, a grease waste line in an HEB store. The line begins 2 feet 6 inches below the finished floor. So I've drawn my finished floor. 2 feet 6 inches is 2.5 feet. So most important thing is that these 6 inches is half of a foot. So to write it in decimal form, I'm going to write it as 2.5. If this was 2 feet 8 inches, then you would write it as 8 divided by 12. And then 8 divided by 12 is 0.66 repeating. So then 2 feet 8 inches would be 2.667 feet. Okay, and then the next part says the finished floor elevation is 886.33. So that means from the ground to the finished floor is 886.33. It also tells you that it's 282 feet from the start of the grease line to the inlet of the grease trap. So what I'm interpreting that information to be is this distance here, from the beginning of the grease line to the inlet of the grease trap. The fall is 2%, so fall is 2%. Remember that the fall is also known as your slope. And we're going to use that value as a decimal. So 2% is 0.02 in decimal form. Finally, it tells you what is the invert of the grease trap inlet. So it's asking for this distance here. That's the first part. What is the invert of the grease trap inlet? And how far below the finished floor is it in feet? So we want to know this distance down here. But then we also want to know how far this distance is from the finished floor. Okay, so really this looks a little different from the previous problems, but in the end, it's all the same. You're getting the same information. It just looks, the starting point's a little different. So looking at this first piece, it tells us this is 886. It tells us this is 2.5. This is 886. This is 2.5. So then the difference between those two values is going to be my starting invert. Again, I'm just learning these like plumbing terms. I hope I'm using them correctly. So this 886.33 minus 2.5 gets me 883.83. So that is this distance here. It also tells you that this distance was 282 and that your fall was 0.02, again, 2%. Remember that your slope or your fall is rise over run. And we want to use this information now to solve for your rise. So rise is going to be 0.02 times your run. Like I said, you can memorize this. This will always be true. As long as your run is this bottom portion and your rise is this top portion. So then you can say that your slope times your run, which was 282, gets you a value of 5.64. And again, that's your rise. So that rise value is here. This is your rise, which we now know to be 5.64. So after this, it's exactly like the previous problem. You get your starting invert, you get the rise of that invert, and then it tells you the rise of that piping, and it tells you what you can kind of figure out this difference here. So this piece is your 883 minus your rise, which was 5.64. So I get 878.19. So that's what this value is here, 878.19. Now, the last piece, I'm going to also write this number up here. Okay, what it's also asking for is this top value. So we need to know what the ground is to the finished floor, which is this number here. And we're going to take away that number that we just solved for to find the difference between the two. So then this piece becomes 886.33 minus 878.19 to get me a difference of 8.14. Okay, finally, it does tell you that it wants your answers in feet and inches. So unfortunately, about the US system here is that 8.14 inches, I'm sorry, 8.14 feet means that this piece needs to be converted. Okay, so this is 0.14, so 14% of 1 foot, which is the same as saying 14% of 12 inches. So 14% of 12 inches means that this gets me 1.68 inches. Okay, so 8.14 feet is actually 8 feet and 1.68 inches. And so when it's asking you to calculate it with 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch is 0.125 inches. So it wants you to make this number have essentially this many decimal places. So essentially it's asking you to make this final value, this inches value, as close to the nearest 1/8 of an inch. So you can say 0.25, 0.125, 0.125. Oh. So 0.63, I would say, is one of the nearer inches. Or 0.75. Yeah, so I would say rounding down by 0.05 is probably closer than rounding up by 0.07, if that makes sense. I think the goal here is really that you are writing your final answer in inches. So being able to get that 0.14 feet is actually 1.68 inches. Again, this 68 is 68th of an inch. So 68% of an inch, so almost 2 inches there. Okay, so that was one of your answers converted, and then converting the other one should be a little very similar. 8.78.19 feet. This last piece right here means that this is 19% of 1 foot, which is 19% of 12 inches. So this is 2.28 inches. And then we can just kind of bring down the rest of it. Okay, hope that helped.